All right. I think we have one magical open slot left. If anybody here is listening and working on a privacy protocol or anything privacy related and wants to speak and contribute, just request speaker slot and we'll see if we can give you and get you in here. I think there's probably a few in here. So, and without further ado, we can get started. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today for another amazing space. I think this is episode 23, if I got that right. And today we're talking about privacy, which is a pretty hotly debated topic and something quite contentious and interesting for me personally. And I think it was Izzy's idea, and she's been kind enough to step in as co host today because Sasha is not able to make it. He is meeting with some portfolio companies. So Izzy is kind enough to step in, and privacy is one of her areas of expertise too. So definitely encouraging her to step in and ask questions and have fun with it too. But to start things off, since we do have some new people here today that I have not spoken with and not had the privilege or the pleasure, let's just do a round quickly, intro yourselves. And I think to break the ice and have fun, let's just say one app that we use every day that is totally violating our privacy, but we can't live without it right now. So raise your hands. Remember not to cut each other off. Keep answers short as possible without being boring, and have fun with it. And Seth, you're up first from Cake Wallet, and then Helios. I think it's Christian.
I mean, I think the obvious answer here is Twitter, unfortunately. X. Where we're at. Can't go without Twitter. It's a valuable platform. There's a reason it's the only social media I have, even though I do love privacy. But I think it's a hilarious one for sure.
Damn, that's an amazing answer. And I was thinking of like other big social media platforms, and I forgot the one that we're actually on. But feel free also to introduce yourself and what you're working on too, because that's important. A lot of people here, we want to share what we're working on so that everybody can follow us closely if they're interested in what we're building.
Yeah, sure. I can do that real quick. So my name's Seth for Privacy. I've been in this space for I guess 7 or 8 years now, focusing on trying to build privacy tech that's actually useful, actually empowers human freedom and aids human flourishing. And I'm VP at Cake Wallet, where we're building a multi-crypto wallet that has cutting-edge privacy features, but isn't just built for nerds by nerds, but is actually built for everyday people to be able to reclaim their financial sovereignty, which is really the underpinning of all of the rest of our human rights. So doing fun stuff, enjoying it while we do it, but also building for serious things as well.
That was a wonderful intro. Thank you, Seth. Good to have you here. And Christian from Helios, and then Score. I think it's Ragu.
Yeah, so it is indeed me, Christian from Helios. I'm the CMO of Helios Blockchain, and what we're building is an interchain blockchain that focuses on tying all these different ecosystems together, reducing the reliance on bridges, and with a reputation system for validators, ensuring that all validators work in an aligned way long term with our goals as the goals of governance and the long-term goal of decentralization and against malicious actors on the blockchain. But to mention an app, well, two examples came to mind. The first one isn't really an app; it's a car. I find it super intrusive. With pretty much every new car, you have to make an account, log in, shares your location data for training AI models for self-driving capabilities, better cruise control, stuff like that. And I don't know, it's one thing that I find to be very privacy invading right now, because if you look at apps, like, yeah, sure, you say you can't live without them, but you could probably uninstall it and you'd still be fine. But with cars, you can't really go anywhere without a car, so I find that to be the most intrusive.
That's another awesome answer that I totally did not think about, but it's so true. I haven't owned or purchased a car in quite a long time, but when the time comes when I actually want to buy another vehicle, definitely going to look for an old classic car that isn't a driving computer because I do not like that aspect of it. Even the keys are really tedious and hard to use. I'm not a fan of that. A great answer. And we got Ragu from Score and then Pauline from Change Now.
Great. As usual, I think it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Hope you all are doing well. My name is Raghuram Rai. I'm the head of Web3 and strategy at Score AI. We're ideally laying the groundwork for an AI first infrastructure layer purpose built to power the next generation of autonomous, intelligent, and immersive AI agents. driving the intersection of Web3, entertainment, and gaming. So data, privacy, tackling a huge set of raw data materials is definitely a core premise for us. And ideally, we're focusing on transforming how users engage with ever-evolving digital environments through adaptive learning systems, modular AI frameworks, and dynamic player responsive intelligence. And I think Melo hit the nail on the head here. Which specific app do we, feel is breaching our privacy, but we're not able to step back from it? I would say WhatsApp is one of them. I know this might not be the first pick for a choice of answer, but me being based out of here in India, we've hit with some recent news that government is going to be scouting all of our social media platforms, including WhatsApp, Instagram, and Telegram as well, I would say, to see if you're interacting in any certain crypto-based transactions. And if you're not disclosing such activities, you can get in trouble. So I would say definitely a huge breach of privacy and security. And I would say that's something that we have to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, both good answers. And yeah, WhatsApp is like, I'm not a big fan of it, but I do realize why it's so widely used that people around the world depend on it because there's no worldwide system for like calling each other without depending on some legacy institution or telecom company or one of these big tech giants. So it is a necessary evil that we have to put up with for now, but hopefully that'll change soon. And great answer on the government part too. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. And I think we have Pauline from Change Now.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Pauline, and I'm Chief Strategy Officer of a instant cryptocurrency exchange service called Change Now. We have always been private. I mean, as private as we can possibly afford, being the service that we are. But we don't require registration or any unnecessary data submission for our clients to be able to use our service. And we plan on carrying on with that for as long as we can. For example, Cake Wallet, where Seth is from, has been our partner for quite a while, and we're kind of glad to be, promoting financial privacy, at least in the crypto sphere. And as for privacy violating applications, I guess like any banking app that you can use is the most violating, because basically um, banks have quite a lot of control over the information about your spending, about you receiving money, about the money, like where the money is coming from, all the email monitoring in place, which is a lot more harsh than, for example, what you've got in crypto. So I cannot live without them. I pay with my card pretty much everywhere because I don't go outside. Um, so I can't really turn to cash or work with crypto as much as I would like. So yeah, banking apps are, I guess, like a necessary evil that we use, but an evil nonetheless.
Yeah, another great answer. And I know I 100% agree because I come from the US originally. And for me, as an American citizen, to open a bank account in other countries, you basically have to get a colonoscopy and they have to invite them into every aspect of your life just to understand and learn everything about you so that you have the privilege of storing your money with another institution. So it's a massive headache. Great answer. And Jeremy, aka NFT Demon, you got your hand up, and then Alex after that.
Yeah, my name is Jeremy Ryan, also known as NFT Demon. I'm the largest NFT artist on BNB chain. Also a consultant for celebrities and Fortune 500 companies on blockchain integrations. And I'd say probably one of the biggest privacy invading apps would be social media apps. Whether that be TikTok and it's the Chinese in your privacy, or whether it be Meta and Twitter and it's your privacy in the U.S. government. But either way, social media is used to do a lot of different surveillance on people.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it was ever came out to be 100% true or not, but I remember the TikTok, the U.S. government not allowing anybody to download it like their children or anything, because they were saying that they were mapping out their house and the layout of buildings with their kids using TikTok. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. I don't know if it ever will prove to be true or not, but it's scary if true. But another good answer. Thank you. And Alex from Session. I think you're muted, or you're not. You don't have a microphone. I see you unmuting, but no sounds coming out. Okay, we'll come back to you. Let's hear from, I think we got Anyone Protocol. This is the first time I've seen you here, but welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. And it's an amazing privacy panel you have lined up. So thanks for calling us on relatively short notice. I'm Neuratic, the COO of Anyone Protocol. We are building the global onion routing network that enables any app to route their traffic and enjoy completely trustless anonymity, fully built in. To the question, which is a great question, by the way, on technology that we can't live without. An interesting one for me is actually, it's hard to avoid the G Suite, even if we don't explicitly use it for our emails or for our scheduling, because when we use Calendly or when we book meetings, inevitably our details and the people we're, corroborating with and speaking with ends up, in their purview. So scheduling meetings and calendars and using Google Meet is that one area where we haven't really been able to move away if we want to make moves in the institutional space. So that's one. Hopefully someone out there is looking to change.
Yeah, fantastic. Another great answer. And I'm overly dependent on G Suite, and I would love for a competitor to come in and make, I think I saw a decentralized G Sheets the other day, and I hope there's more developments like that are open source and, protecting our privacy a little more. But another great answer. And I think Alex is back, so let's give him another shot.
Does it work? Can you hear me this time? Okay, perfect.
Welcome.
Yeah, I think Fileverse, it might be the project you're thinking of. It's a great alternative
Yeah,
to
might be
G
that
Suite. Yeah, so I'm Alex. I'm the president of the STF, or the Session Technology Foundation, which is the steward of Session, a decentralized messaging app that kind of aims to give a familiar and relatively normal for a metadata resistant messaging app experience. And in terms of things that we use every day, there's already been some really good answers. One that I've come across recently, which isn't necessarily an everyday one, but because I'm looking to move houses, I would say like any real estate platform or app. This is something that you 100% cannot opt out of, unless, of course, you're a landowner and just stay in the one place and never live anywhere but on the property you own. But the amount of information that you have to hand over to real estate agents or real estate platforms that I'm not sure are qualified to hold this type of sensitive information is really super alarming, and something that increasingly people are coming into. And I think there's so much scrutiny on renters and people coming into your home, which is fair enough. But yeah, it's very uncomfortable that this has become now more of a digital transaction.
That's an amazing answer too. I didn't even consider that. Getting surprised and shocked by some of these answers, but thank you, Alex. That was a great one, and good luck with the move for the house as well. And let's see. I think let's hear from GPT 360, and then Sean, and then finally our wonderful host Izzy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arcanum, and I'm a co-founder of GPT 360, and we are aimed on Web3 marketing with proven records with the help of AI, just to show real value of marketing per user. And it's some short introduction about us, but the thing is, we talk about privacy right now, and just wish to share some recent good findings, what I had for myself, for example, just to be sure that private wallets of our company, all transaction that will be saved. For example, we're starting using Purism notebooks, call it Librem 14, for example. They're actually pretty good in terms of privacy. Of course, there's probably nothing in the world is super protected that can be hacked. But I think there's like some companies that aimed to protect you in general in any way. They're like business, and this actually prevents some like low-level hacking and mistaking some like what hackers trying usually to do. So yeah, like first of all, if you like wish to get some privacy, start using some privacy hardware, because even when you're using your Android phone, iPhone, just this company are collecting data. And of course, if you got on Windows or Mac, same. So probably yes, the first step for privacy is that you need to start using some hardware. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's not just a software issue or a platform or app issue. It's definitely the hardware we're using as well. Thank you for that. And okay, Sean, and then Izzy, and then Lasha, I think from Merimo, and I think that's everybody after that.
Hi, folks. My name is Sean O'Brien. I founded something called Yale Privacy Lab at Yale Law School, and have been working in free and open source software for a little over 2 decades. I've been in the privacy space probably officially for about a decade or so. I know some of the folks in the panel, Seth, et cetera, and I'm very happy to be hearing about all the interesting projects that you all are creating, building, shipping. I use some of them, so that's really awesome. I'm driving a Toyota Corolla right now from 2001. So for the person who mentioned a nice old car with, I mean, it has a car computer. It's got an ODP2 connector, but it's not, a car computer in the sense of, a Tesla. So anyway, I really understand, I think, and align with that piece. I think we can solve a lot of our problems at the application layer just by opting out, at the risk of plugging opt-out pods. Pods. But it's hard to opt out, right? We're talking on a Twitter X app. I installed it and polluted a very clean phone that's all de-Googled to have this conversation. So there are network effects there, right, that keep us locked in at the application layer. But I do think we need to start thinking about how to get these apps into people's hands on physical hardware and physical devices. So, we are not going to have a reality where people are using alternatives if we don't ship them to them, if we're getting locked into these ecosystems. My team at IV Cyber, IVYCYBER.com, which includes ex-CIA whistleblower on the torture program, John Kiriakou. We're working on a suite of apps we call Privacy Safe, end-to-end encrypted. We have text chat, video chat, an inbox app that also can send non-encrypted emails, so you can sort of label the two things separately, and a Dropbox-like app. We're shipping those on our own custom Linux distro, and we are also working on an Android ROM. Surprise, surprise, a lot of people are doing custom ROMs and shipping those phones out. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, please check us out. One of the reasons I'm here is to sort of reintroduce myself to the development world. I've sort of had my head down working on this project for a while. I've been in workshops with John where we're showing people how to be more secure and surveillance conscious in the real world using his excellent expertise from being on both sides of the wire, as we called it, both inside the CIA and also put in the federal penitentiary for whistleblowing. So he has a lot of experience that's been really valuable. And I want to make sure that you guys can connect with us. We're shipping Cake Wallet, for example, on the tablet that we're selling. And the first ones will be going out in a couple weeks at the Hackers on Planet Earth conference in New York. So thank you all and keep up the great work.
Thank you. That's awesome, man. I respect the dedication for being able to join today, and I think you're my new privacy spirit animal. So thank you for joining, Sean. Definitely interesting, and like Sean said, follow all these fine folks and check out what they're working on, because I'm sure everybody here is working on something really cool. And let's hear from Izzy and then Lasha to round it out.
Hi everyone, I am Izzy. Thank you, Melo, for asking me to be a co-host. I'm really excited for the space. So I'm the creator of Utopian Beta, a newsletter where I explore the intersection of AI, crypto, Web3, and how they intersect with society, with a particular focus on governance systems and network state movement and all of those kind of new network society areas. When it comes to privacy, it's I think it's one of the most important things to kind of get right at the moment. And whenever I bring this up, I think like a lot of people tell me that people don't care about privacy, but now we've got a whole panel and everyone's really passionate about it, so that's obviously wrong. And yeah, it kind of underpins everything, as Seth said at the beginning. Increasingly more as we kind of have more and more of our lives online, and a lot of the progress that I cover in kind of network state movement and all of that kind of stuff, it really, if we solve privacy, a lot of it is possible. I mean, it's possible anyway, but it's important to it, basically. And on the app question, I mean, everyone said so many really good answers. And I was like sitting here thinking, what could I choose? Because I was going to go with Google, but that's obviously already said. I guess like the big AI companies now, like ChatGPT, like OpenAI with ChatGPT and all of those kind of companies, they're probably one of the biggest new concerns to my privacy. I'm quite careful about what I put on it, but yeah, I'm going to go with that. ChatGPT.
Damn it, you stole my answer. I was totally going to say that one next, but that's a great answer. And yeah, I always think it's funny that most of the people you speak to on a day-to-day basis here in this space, they're basically training ChatGPT on their business ideas and getting them to validate those ideas, but actually OpenAI is taking all of our information in our brain waves, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, great answer, Izzy. And thank you for co-hosting, and thanks for the idea as well and helping organizing. And I think Lasha is the last one to go.
Yeah, hi everyone. Basically, I'm not gonna name an app because what we're working on, like we work on identity, which is the most compromised thing in all these apps, right? It's like a kind of cornerstone, the spinal cord that we think about how to make it private and stuff. So what we do in general, we build this special cryptography, you can call it, that enables you to verify who you are, whether you scan your face, your passport, or anything like that, directly on your device. So there's no storage, there is no sharing, but the magic of cryptography that allows you to verify who you are. And I think it's pretty universal and could be applied for the applications to spread privacy through that new type of architecture. We've been doing quite a lot of stuff. So I don't know, like verifying your identity on your phone has unlocked anonymous voting. Like last year in 3 authoritarian regimes, different activist groups and politicians have run this new wave of digital protest, and I call it digital activists that we've been like supporting. Or alternatively, you can use the same tech for not disclosing and managing your crypto keys or accounts and everything around the internet.
All right. I respect all of that, but you don't use any apps that violate your privacy, or you're like 100% safeguarded
No,
against
of course. I'm a mega consumer of every app that was mentioned. So
Okay, fair enough. All right. Thank you for that. And I'm definitely interested to learn more about that later on too. And all right, we had some awesome answers so far. That was a very fun and engaging speed lightning round, whatever you want to call it. I was going to ask this question first, but I think Izzy brought up a great point. Maybe I was going to ask it later on, but one of the reasons why privacy isn't more talked about, I guess, is there's no motivation there. At least I haven't seen that many people actually caring about privacy, at least with respects to convenience. So we all use these apps that we've just named because they're highly convenient, Web 2, for lack of a better word. And we haven't been convinced to walk away from those platforms in large numbers yet. So I wanted to ask what everybody thinks first. What percentage of people actually care about privacy right now? Like, obviously, all of us on this board cares, but we're all kind of privacy nerds by the look of it. So what share of actual normal people that use these apps that we've just mentioned, or these cars that we've just mentioned, actually cares about privacy? And I'll open it up to Seth, and then Pauline, and then Raghu, and then Christian.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question I think about and talk about a lot, and it's one where at face value, it does seem like not enough people care about privacy. But when you actually get on the ground and talk to people, like for instance, I've been at many different Bitcoin and crypto conferences this year where my primary focus and that of Cake Wallet has been talking about privacy. And essentially, everyone we talk to has a deep desire to have better privacy, especially financial privacy. I think the real problem, though, is people kind of disguise their feeling of incompetency, for lack of a better word, like their inability to actually gain privacy. They disguise that by saying things like, I have nothing to hide. No one actually wants their bank statements published. No one actually wants their messages, their private messages published or known by outside entities. I think the real problem, though, is people see this need for privacy, they have that desire, but they don't know how to actually fix the problem. Or the solutions so far have been too costly in terms of convenience for them to be willing to make that jump because they don't have enough of a perceived immediate need right now. But I think also when you look at like the Western world versus much of the world that has had authoritarian governments in the near past, it's a very different conversation that you have with people because they understand what a lack of privacy can mean. Whereas many of us in the Western world, especially like me as an American, we live in a relatively free, if clearly not perfect, society here in the US. And so we don't have as much of a perceived need right now, even if the need actually is great. But even here, talking to thousands of people over the last few months in multiple conferences, they all really want privacy. They're extremely curious. They just don't feel like they can actually achieve it. And that's what we have to change as people actually building tools for privacy.
Fantastic point. So you're, by the sound of it, you're saying it's more of an awareness or maybe a defeatism issue, like we're facing overwhelming odds, so why even bother, sort of thing. And these are all different flavors or motivations for why people don't care more. And I absolutely agree. Great input. And Pauline, and then Raghu.
Just yeah. So as someone who has actually lived in a country where user privacy is not absolutely not a human right, and your privacy is compromised on the daily, I can say that actually, like, being more or less private is not that hard. um, and it's not even about just your financial transactions, because you got crypto for that if you need to transfer like sensitive money somewhere, so the chance of actually being tracked is a lot lower. I'm talking about privacy on the internet. So for example, I don't have any social media accounts open under my real name, because Pauline Shanget is obviously a pseudonym. And I honestly am not on social media much as a private person because, again, there is certain concerns that are that pertain to my job or pertain to my personal life. So I guess this is kind of the price of convenience that I and a lot of other people are willing, especially those who don't live in America or in Europe, are willing to pay. And I think, like, if you were to tell somebody from like Russia, for example, that your car is stealing your data and uploading it to God knows where, everybody would be super scared. And the same goes for just freedom of self expression outside, not just on the internet. Because again, in a lot of places in the world, you've got fairly advanced facial recognition systems that that constantly gather data that can be used against you. So I think when we're talking about privacy, we shouldn't just be talking about financial freedom or like transaction freedom, right? We should be talking about digital freedom for everybody in all areas of life. I'm sorry for the long rant. This is just something that's been bothering me for a very long time. So this is a little bit personal.
Oh, for sure. I understand it's personal for a lot of people, and it's not just a matter of convenience or preference, but it's like very important, high stakes. Raghu?
Yes, I'd say I'll agree there with Seth there. There's awareness, absolutely. Everyone knows individually, privacy is a state of concern, but in the end, on a micro and macro level, it in the end rolls down to the individual experience itself. When the world falls down on them, then they decide to sort of take a proactive decision that this is something that is of a larger risk, and it can also harm some of the activities that I'm doing digitally. And majority of these entities and platforms that we are interacting with, they're putting on a show. They're putting on a show that everything's secure, you don't need to worry about anything, but we don't know what's going on in the back end. And that is a proactive measure where people know that this is important, but they don't know how to take an action because, as you highlighted, this is a necessity. They're using these apps because of ease of access, or they need to have it in their day-to-day lives, but they don't know how can they minimize that factor because it's just a part of their overall interaction flow. And in the end, we've built entire ecosystems on the promise of decentralization, talking specifically about Web3 here, without designing a single native layer of user agency. And most privacy tooling today is reactive, not proactive in any sense. It comes after the breach, after the data sale has already taken place, after the protocol leak has already happened, and everyone's in a panic mode that this has happened and this shouldn't be happening. But what was the conscious decision while this wasn't happening? Why was no one taking the right measures to avoid these scenarios in the first place? And we know data is one of the biggest monetization games with all these digital landscapes. We know every single micro and macro data that we're putting anywhere on the internet is being used, either sold to other buyers, other platforms. And unless and until it comes on their own heads that this is a potential risk, no one's taking that proactive measure to actually do something about it. So it's really a game of consciousness at this point. Who is going to take the first step? Who is going to take the right measure to take the right amendments to avoid these scenarios before they even take place? Once this takes the right amendments and people see the right pathways that they can actually do something about it, they can actually take the right measures, I feel the adoption and the aggressiveness towards actually adopting privacy, not just from a builder perspective, but also from a retail perspective while using these applications, I feel will scale with time. But it's again a decision which everyone needs to be on the same page about. And while having these macro legacy platforms in play where they're putting on a show of something else that's happening, and in reality, the situation is we don't know what is actually going on the back end because there's no way to find out. They can say something even after 5 years that we're super private, we're not leaking our information or data. We have no idea how our data is being utilized. We have no idea how is it being monetized or how are they using it for their own personal benefit. So as long as we don't take a proactive action there, it's really hard to maximize that sentiment that everyone is super aggressive to take this as a really important factor at play.
Yeah, for sure. I think I forgot to give my answer before, and I don't use it that much. But like these, the Amazons of the world, people forget that they're not e-commerce companies. They're actually making all their money on selling your data. And it would be nice if we had the option to sell our own data or just opt out and say nobody should own my data. But that's data, like you said, is way too valuable. They're not going to forego that opportunity to profit off of this new resource that's vast and untapped for the most part. And I think it was Sean that mentioned that we need to make these privacy ordinances or protocols as convenient, if not more convenient, than the apps that we're already using. Let's hear from Christian, and then I think Jeremy.
Yeah, hey, so some really great points by everyone. Really thoughtful discussion, but so basically, I think that there's only a bubble of people that really truly care about privacy over convenience right now. I think everyone cares about privacy until you have to balance that with convenience. For example, myself, I would say I am an advocate for privacy, and I do believe that it is a human right, and it shouldn't be automatically sold and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I love getting into my car and Waze already knows where I want to go. It knows I go to the gym at certain times. It knows when I go to visit my friends. It knows when I have an in-person meeting because it syncs with my calendar. And this is giving a lot of data to Google because Google owns Waze, for example. But at the same time, the convenience aspect of it is super, super useful. And it's the same for all these companies that offer integrations, like with calendar, with email, with AI. It's extremely convenient. You never miss a call. Everything is scheduled for you. Maybe you get a nice summary beforehand or afterwards, because right now you can't even get into, like, I've been getting into some calls, and before everyone joins, there's like 5 AI agents already taking meetings, recording everything and making notes. And it's very, very useful. But you do sacrifice quite a bit of privacy, especially since on calls, you tend to discuss sometimes sensitive matters that might be confidential. Nothing nefarious, but just some aspects of business are confidential. So what are these companies doing with that data? Are they training on it? Will there be a leak? But everyone gives that up because of the convenience of having automated notes from all the calls that they do. So yeah, I think it really depends. People care until they have to sacrifice some convenience, and then it becomes much more complex.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the ultimate example is everybody, when you go to a new website and it allows you to sign in with your Facebook account, your Google account, or anything, it's already a breach of privacy, having to answer all these questions. But now they're connecting them. They're trying to make your full identity or your digital footprint and connect all the dots. So it's a little bit
Sorry
scary.
to interrupt you, but one company that I feel is doing this really, really well right now is Sign In with Apple, because it sort of generates a new email address that's more anon, that automatically forwards to your main iCloud email address. And you can just sign in sort of anonymously to any app. They actually make it a condition: if an app allows social login, it must allow Apple social login as well. So yeah, I don't know. I think that they're doing this really well. Obviously, it's not a perfect solution, but I like the more privacy-centric approach that they took on it.
Interesting. Okay. Before I go to Jeremy, I just want to invite everybody that's speaking right now, or even people listening, just drop any privacy measures or articles or anything privacy related. Maybe it's a new app or something that's helping mitigate these issues, and drop them in the comment section for the space. So it could be helpful if we create a thread later on based off some of the answers. And thanks for the good suggestions. And Jeremy, let's hear from you.
Yeah, I think most people realize that they need privacy. They're distrustful of government entities in all sorts of places. And I think that people want privacy, but they just don't want to do too much for it. And so they don't put a whole lot of effort into taking steps for it, even though in concept they want it. They don't want it if they have to take extra steps for it. And I think that's a big issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know who's next. I think anyone, and then Sean, and then Alex.
Sure. I was just sharing our iPhone browser under the Spaces thread. It was a great idea to ask people to share some tech. And I agree with the gist of the question. I do think, really, if you look at the global population, maybe only 15 or 20% explicitly care about privacy enough to integrate, private technology into their lives. But I think if you take a step back from sort of the principle of privacy and towards some of the more practical consequences, I think that percentage can bump up very quickly if people realize, that corporations that create this sort of online profile about you not only use it to track you, but to raise prices. People see their airline prices go up for tickets. They see certain searches correlate to certain ads against them. People are noticing this, and when it impacts them like that, I think that there's an immediate and visceral reaction and a desire for change. And even with the age of AI, and you have now ordinary non-technical people quite commonly using ChatGPT and those kind of LLMs. Sam Altman announced the other day that yes, this information can be used against you in a court of law. So I think we're close to a tipping point here where people are going to be really genuinely impacted on a day-to-day basis by this data collection. And I think that percentage is ripe to grow, and very quickly. And so it's our job in a way to be positioned to build those privacy alternate technologies, because we're hopefully building it for a world where those become mainstream.
100%. Yeah, I wanted to mention that the other day I saw that Sam Altman said that, and that's absolutely horrifying. Like, if that isn't enough of a wake-up call for people that don't think about privacy, then it should be. Okay, let's hear from Sean and then Alex. Sorry for waiting, Alex.
Hey guys, yeah, the comments have been incredible here. Thank you for the discussion, and I'm glad to see this space filling up. So clearly there are folks who are interested. The phenomena we're talking about, sort of from an academic point of view, is usually called the privacy paradox. But actually, I don't see it very much as a paradox. It actually, if both anecdotally and talking to people and doing hundreds of workshops and lectures on the subject, but also looking at the research, it's like any other system where people feel powerless, right? Everybody wants privacy. Often in polling, in surveys, in conversation, it's the number one thing that they talk about, but they feel powerless to get it, right? Or the path has too much friction, so to speak. In cybersecurity, it's the same thing, right? If you look at spending, even in the large organizations, the number one concerns are all pretty basic cybersecurity concerns. The C-suite still doesn't allocate more spending year to year, generally speaking, on cybersecurity, right? And there's also similarly an analogy where individuals and companies, organizations, teams, they transfer risk, right? So if you're in a company, you're moving a lot of the risk around cybersecurity and privacy into insurance, essentially, right? Paying for cyber insurance instead of doing the hard work of securing your business, let's say. And same thing with individuals. Individuals want to see that billboard that Apple puts up that says Apple's privacy, whatever, whatever. And then they just buy Apple products and cross their fingers, right? And then once you're locked into these ecosystems, it's very hard to get out of them, because you do also have, the benefits, as someone mentioned, Waymo, maps, and so on. It is hard for me to get around not using GPS, but I do it out of principle, okay? It makes my life more difficult. I end up going around the block a little bit more. I end up sort of printing out directions like it's 1998, but that's the way I'm living, just to sort of prove that point to myself. We'll see how far I get with it. But to have power in the information society, right? The part of Yale that Privacy Lab is an initiative of is called the Information Society Project at Yale, right? And to be part of that information society, giving up your privacy, putting yourself in a space like this, using a Twitter X to talk to everybody here, right? It gives you a certain amount of power in the information system that you're going to lose if you don't give it up. So I'm glad we're also talking about this as a data economy, as these sorts of things. We're seeing, for example, in the United States, some of the really first government overreach with apps like TikTok, which, by the way, is terrible for your privacy, so is DeepSeek, et cetera, but run by different intermediaries, international intermediaries that the US government doesn't like. So now they're trying to mandate, ostensibly, we'll see how it goes, hasn't been going so well, the blocking of TikTok. Generally speaking, that kind of totalitarian control in the US comes with a smile, comes through the market. Someone mentioned Russia, for example. I was talking about controls there. Well, in Russia, every car is mandated to have GPS, right? Mandated to have a device in it. That's not happening yet in the United States. It could very well happen. It could be a state-by-state thing. But the way it is happening is by incentivization, right? People are paying less for insurance, sticking a GPS device in their car. They're doing gig economy jobs. They're paying them almost nothing, and they're being tracked all the time. They're obviously, have a phone in their pocket and car computers and these kinds of things that are tracking them. So, as George Carlin says, that stuff comes with a smile in the US, right? And I think what's positive to me is that we still have a free enough information system here to be having these conversations. And I think the reason we're sort of viscerally worried about it, as the last speaker said, we're sort of at a tipping point. We're seeing the US now start to turn to these technologies and these mechanisms of control much more strongly. So I guess my advice would be, and I've got to teach in a few minutes, so I've got to leave the space, unfortunately, but please keep in touch with me. And I'll be reaching out to the folks in the space as well. But my advice would be to try to act local, right? I was able to get ALPR devices removed from New Haven, at least for now, New Haven, Connecticut, basically by going around to local shop owners and having conversations with them and starting to stir up some trouble, so to speak. And suddenly the pilot program for these terrible ALPRs that were just automating tickets because people were pulling in front of a pizza restaurant to pick up their pizza, suddenly that stopped, right? So there are ways to at least tackle those kinds of issues. And this is why I say, not everything's about applications or personal decision making, just like with things like climate change and so on. We have to not worry so much about whether or not we're, using too much power in our light bulbs, so to speak. We have to start worrying about the mechanisms of control we have locally in our towns, in our cities, in our local governments. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Sean, and good luck teaching, and thank you for joining. We'll definitely be in touch. And also, you just reminded me, please go grab a slice of pizza at Sally's. Like that's my old hometown, so definitely enjoy it for me. And I miss the pizza there dearly.
Absolutely. Thanks so much,
Take
guys.
it easy, Sean. And Alex, thank you for being patient. And I think after you, Izzy has a question for everybody.
No problem. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to follow up after the mic drop from Sean there. That was a great mini talk, I would say. I do look, just to echo the sentiments of pretty much everyone that has spoken so far, is I think when you pose people directly with the question, do you care about privacy? Overwhelmingly, people will say yes. But I think this kind of speaks to what Sean was talking about, in that there is a lack of understanding in the power and the agency that people lose when they give away their information and when they give away their privacy, because that is deliberately abstracted away, by the technology companies and the power structures that have been created around them. And on the flip side, it's not necessarily clear to them what they're going to gain by trying to reclaim that privacy. And there are a lot of challenges and roadblocks on that path as well. Like, people have talked about the classic convenience privacy dilemma, right? Which I think also is something that is real, and it's pragmatic to talk about it, but also as people that are advocating for privacy, sometimes it feels unhelpful to bring up this rhetoric, right? Of like, oh, well, you can have privacy, but you're going to have to give up all these conveniences and your life is going to become really hard, but at least you'll have privacy, right? Because to the average person, I think this seems like a horrible trade-off. And so it obviously shows that we have an institutional problem, that we're pitting these two benefits against each other. And as the people in this call and the people in this space, it's our job to remove that dilemma and give people a world where they can have privacy and also, the conveniences of technology.
Absolutely, well said, man. And thank you again for waiting. It's pretty hard to get words in when we have such a stacked panel of excellent people. But Izzy, I think you have a question for everybody.
Yeah, I do. Something I wanted to bring up and kind of discuss within this whole context of privacy, and I think I've asked a couple of people when I've interviewed them as well. In the UK, privacy discussions and kind of debates have kind of come up quite a lot in the past few months. A few months ago, it was because it was leaked that the UK government was trying to get Apple, or compelled Apple, to put a backdoor in their encryption. That was a few months ago. There's a law that allows them to do that privately. Like, the fact that it was leaked was quite a big deal, because in the law it says companies can't say anything about what they have to do, because they'll get prosecuted. So that was one thing, like a few months ago. More recently, there's been amendments to kind of like the Online Safety Act, which was brought in 2023. And the recent amendments kind of make certain websites request extensive user data in order to kind of like prove things like their age. So kind of they have to upload identity documents, and these aren't banks, they're like any kind of website, a lot of porn obviously, but just to prove like their ages. I could probably see it happening on kind of like alcohol websites as well, just to prove your age. But of course, those were implemented because it's to protect kind of vulnerable people, children. So that's super important. So my question is, how do we kind of balance this online safety with the need for privacy? And I guess this is like, when I've written out about it before, it's been in the context of kind of zero knowledge proofs and kind of like what they could help us do, i.e. kind of proving certain things about ourselves without actually sharing too much. So yeah, my question is, how do we balance supporting online safety and privacy?
Let's hear from Alex first, since we made him wait last time.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, so I mean, I think the core to this issue, and this is something that I'm quite passionate about, and something that we see with the OSA and with similar kind of legislation that's been introduced in other parts of the world, like Australia, and possibly now the US as well, is that any time that you're introducing a policy that could negatively affect people's privacy, whether that's the privacy of children or adults, or anybody, this is going to come with negative safety consequences. Privacy inherently is going to increase people's safety. And so when we're coming up with all of these, some might describe them as harebrained schemes, I think that is a core consideration. Like we're stripping away privacy and we're kind of forgetting the benefits that it holds, the inherent benefits that it holds, and that it should be a core part of any digital safety policy.
Sorry, I was talking to nobody there. Let's hear from Seth.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this question, it's a fascinating one because obviously we want the internet to be a safer place. I mean, I have children. I don't want it to be a place that's harmful for them. But I think the key thing that we have to remember when thinking about how do we make the internet safer or how do we balance privacy with ultimately surveillance is that we're already wildly out of balance, skewed towards surveillance. The internet is already broken. The surveillance paradigm already exists. Personal privacy is very rarely achieved. So I think like when we talk about bringing balance to these topics, it's really about bringing better privacy to the individual. It's not about thinking, at least about dedicating the majority of our time or a high amount of our time to how do we do this in a safe way, but rather how do we give people the tools to achieve privacy themselves and give them power back, give power back to the individual rather than to the corporation, rather than to the nation state, rather than to the social media company, but give power back to the individual. And when we actually reach something even resembling parity in this power struggle, then I think we can have more detailed conversations around what does it look like to do these things in a safer way. But the really difficult thing right now is that safety is almost always a term used to couch surveillance and control rather than a term that is used to actually mean we want to make the internet more safe. And that's what makes it really hard to have like open and honest discord about this, is that most of the people pushing for safety are actually pushing for control, but they understand that the buzzwords of children or terrorists are enough to be able to get a lot of surveillance and control through that they want. And some of them, I think, even are well meaning and actually do want that. But the tools that they build to implement a theoretically safer internet necessarily end up in the hands of nation states or companies that then will abuse them because there are many other benefits to them in gaining more power over the individual. So it's a really tricky topic and one we can definitely dig into, and one that I think we should have in the back of our minds. But until we have more of a balance towards personal privacy and towards personal choice, I don't think it should be a primary focus.
Well said. Yeah, I think it reminds me that there's some like autocratic, heavily authoritarian, surveillance states out there that they're completely safe and there's pretty much no violent crime, but at what cost? So you have to sacrifice a whole bunch of freedom just for the safety, and some people are okay with it, and some people would rather the risk to have their own privacy and their own freedom to move about and not be surveilled by the state. So it's different for everybody, but it's definitely an interesting spectrum that everybody sits on in one side or the other. I think Lasha, do you want to go ahead? And then Pauline?
Yeah, quickly. I think like those two things, yes, they should work together. But the problem we're having right now is basically over the years, over the current internet, we build out the safety frameworks, and sometimes we're trying to now enforce the privacy on those like outdated and kind of like pile of things that does not really now come together. So in order for us to have this privacy preserving internet that is safe at the same time, I think like now in this moment, we need to first switch to like complete empowerment of the user from a privacy tooling perspective, and then we can reverse engineer all the safety aspects, how it could be like enforced going forward. Now we're dealing with this very rotten and broken down rails that is super hard, even from a safety perspective, and it's even harder to embed privacy on it.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, it makes me wonder, like you brought up a good point. And what I'm thinking right now is like, do we sit around and wait for people like yourself to reverse engineer these things and give us an easier, convenient way to deal with these issues? Or, there's obviously things that we can all do right now to protect our own privacy. Like I think Sean before mentioned, not opting in is a start. It doesn't protect us from mostly anything, but it's definitely something. So it's another interesting point to bring up. Like a lot of people, maybe the defeatism is only counteracted by somebody smarter than me will someday come up with something that will protect me from this.
Yeah. I also wanted to, I'm sorry, I got rugged there for a second. Is it okay if I speak, or I'm
Yeah,
sorry
go
for
ahead.
interrupting?
Go ahead.
Let me share a few tips that me and a lot of people, like a lot of other people have used in the past. So get yourself a VPN, use it liberally. I barely turn it off unless I need to access some specific websites. Get yourself like on DuckDuckGo instead of Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use. DuckDuckGo has been excellent in preserving user privacy, and this is their like main mission. Get yourself a pseudonym. Like, don't go and air out your real name to anyone. Specifically when it comes to sending transactions everywhere. And this is like the bare minimum that you, as someone who cares about privacy, should do. Oh, and another thing, I never accept cookies. As a marketer, I know that's kind of counterproductive, and I don't like it when change navigator users accept cookies because it's hard for me to watch over traffic. But as an individual, again, not accepting cookies is one of the very few like bare minimum steps that you can take to you know um, be more private without compromising a lot of your rights.
Yeah, absolutely. All great suggestions. And please drop those in the comments too, so we don't forget about them. Those are all great suggestions that anybody can implement from today, I think. I did want to push back on one thing that you said, and I'll open up to you or anybody. But one of the things I do take exception to is the pseudonym aspect. Like, I kind of do that by having a nickname, but I am not afforded the privilege of being private or undoxed. I have to be heavily public facing. Obviously, I'm here now, and most of us are here. So, how do we get around that? If we're privacy loving individuals, do we just have to suck it up and go with the flow and invite that invasion of our own privacy? Especially if you're a CEO or a founder of a company, you really have to be the face. And gone are the days where you could be 100% anonymous and run a company with all the AML and KYC procedures, and then the community distrust, rightfully so, because there's been so many scams and rug pulls and awful situations where people had their money stolen or their livelihoods taken by people that never revealed who they are. Even to this day, we have Pump Fund that we discussed a few weeks ago. I think Elon and the founding team are not totally anonymous, but they might as well be functionally. It's very hard to get information on them, at least on the basic web for most retail users of Pump Fund. So is it possible to maintain any semblance of privacy as a founder or investor or anybody publicly facing? Because now we're all expected to be marketers. We have to market, whether you're a musician or an artist or you have a small shop on Etsy or you're a crypto degen, we all have to be public facing in some way or another.
I mean, this is kind of like the price that you have to negotiate with yourself. I mean, I, as Pauline Shanget, am also public facing, and I do need to like put my face out there, put myself out there because I'm representing a brand, and this is just something that I have to live with. And I obviously take all the necessary precautions to not be overly doxxed, as does most of our team. But again, like when it comes to work privacy and personal privacy, I think you can kind of draw a line between like what personal data you submit to the companies that are harvesting it. For example, like OpenAI or Apple or Google or anything else, really. Uh, but like you can close yourself off to things that you can opt out of, and how many things that you opt out of, it's basically up to you. It's your decision to make. How much information you're willing to give up about yourself that you would be able to justify, I guess, in terms of your job or in terms of your convenience or literally anything else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a very private person, which probably none of you would guess because here I am. And we, at Arcanum Ventures, we put lots of videos on YouTube every week. We're constantly putting our faces out there and talking and trying to be thought leaders in the space to protect others and to help educate others because we actually believe in that goal. But we have to face the discomfort of being very public facing. And luckily, we're not big KOLs with like hundreds of thousands of followers, but any follower you accrue, you get that much more public facing, and that's privacy that we can never truly get back. And from my perspective, it's hard to stay ahead. It's hyper competitive. It's hard to get ahead if you don't have this marketing aspect, if you don't have this founder led marketing aspect. And then on top of that, for founders, I know personally that I would not invest in somebody that's anonymous right now. Maybe in the past I would have, or I have, but right now it's just not a thing. Like you need relentless KYC and AML, strictly from a legal perspective. And then you also need to intimately know the team. You need to be able to go meet up with them in person or have calls with them. But it's just not possible to be completely anonymous and run a company in these days. Unless I'm missing something and one of you has figured out the solution, please do share. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is a solution. I think the reality is these days, at least with your peers, there's a level of your identity that needs to be shared. In terms of publicly, although I think, of course, now there's an expectation that the leaders in a given project are going to have some kind of public presence. So you need to have a public identity, right? But the level at which that intersects, with your quote unquote real identity, can still to some extent be up to you. There's still, you have an ability to moderate what you share online, and this is something that you should always be conscious of, whether you're a public person or just a normal non-founder person, right? That is still sharing information online. You've got to be cautious and conscious and deliberate about what parts of your identity that you're actually sharing there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a compromise, like Pauline said as well. And I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter, for example. And on Twitter, I have a stupid PFP with a guy with a mohawk and smoking a cigarette, and not my full name. And then on LinkedIn, I have an actual picture of myself, and I have my full name. So even on a platform to platform basis, we compromise on privacy and we decide to make these choices. So that's one little compromise that I've made personally, and I'm sure others here have done the same. Anyone? Neuritic?
Just a small ad, and I do sort of see that sentiment that people are very cautious to invest their time or money into projects where the team is anonymous. I think we've been fortunate as a team where we've given both the founders and the prominent team members a choice of whether they choose to reveal their real name and identity to the world. For us, we've been around we were fair launched. We've had a community around us now for 2 years. We build everything in the open source. And I think we've had a chance to build a reputation for ourselves where people may not necessarily demand that. But I think that is, for newer projects, increasingly difficult. Just wanted to add. But it is sort of possible. And we can attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask you because I saw your name, Neurotic, and I wasn't sure if that was your real name or not. But yeah, some people even go by pseudonyms, and that's totally fair game, like especially if you're working on a privacy protocol or a privacy platform. I did want to shift the conversation for a moment. I had one possible solution that I wanted to pick your brains on. I can't go one space without mentioning or shilling the fact that Arcanum Ventures, one of the main things that we do is design economic systems that try to align all stakeholders. So in this particular regard, I've heard some of you say you use Waymo or Google or whatever, and it's super convenient to get in your car and use Waymo and have it know where you want to go, for instance. But do you think one possible solution could be having the right of first refusal to purchase back your data? Maybe if we're economically incentivized and aligned, maybe companies would cede us the right to own our own data. We'd still have to pay for it, which is not ideal, but maybe we could still enjoy these conveniences without anybody else having to know where we're going, aside from ourselves. So I just wanted to see if anybody had any pushback on that or thought of any ways to break that, because it just kind of occurred to me that that could be a useful system to enact. Alex, I don't know if you have your hand up from last question or not, but you feel free to speak.
I didn't. I think that is definitely an interesting solution. There could be some just equity issues, right? In terms of who has the ability to do that. Privacy shouldn't be something that you have to purchase back. It should be something that you have your right to by default at all times, and for that to be infringed upon, it shouldn't be an economic problem. It is because of the way that technology works at the moment, right? We have an information economy, and so our personal information gets caught up in that, and becomes, a commodity. Although I guess it would technically be an improvement if we could purchase it back, right? At the moment, we don't even have that option. But yeah, I'll throw to Seth.
Yeah, just one quick note. I 100% agree, but that's just one possible solution. I would rather have the right to do it than not have that right. But you're 100% right. It is sad that we're here in 2025 talking about buying this extra premium concession, which is just our own data. Sorry, Seth, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I think Alex nailed it. I think the best case is just don't collect data. Like, one of the beautiful things about building privacy preserving tech is that you can actually do things in really novel ways today, where you can give a lot of the same user experience, if not all of the same user experience, but do so using things like zero knowledge cryptography to not have to collect the data. And it actually is much simpler as a company too. Like, the rules and regulations around data retention and everything are verbose and difficult to implement and require whole teams to properly handle. And if you just don't collect the data, your life as a business actually gets far simpler. I think there are many, especially smaller businesses, that would much prefer to not have to collect any data. And any way that they can get around that, they can avoid collecting user data, they'll actually enjoy that, because it means they have a lower IT spend, lower cybersecurity spend. There's a lot of benefits there. So I think, like, obviously that's the best solution. And, like, that's one thing that we've done at Cakewallet is our reps just don't collect data. We don't collect user accounts. We don't have anything on our users, which is obviously good for a privacy perspective, but also just good for a business perspective. I think on the idea that you mentioned of buying back your data, I think it's definitely an interesting one. I think, like, the inverse would also be interesting of, if you want to voluntarily provide data, like usage statistics or something, why shouldn't you get paid for that? A percentage of what they sell that data for, or there be some financial incentive for you directly? Because right now we essentially get stolen from twice, and that they take our data and use it to benefit themselves as a company, and then they go and resell that data to other marketing companies, ad companies, and so they essentially get double benefit from our data. So I think something where either you pay to have them not sell your data, which still feels a little, it still feels dirty. Like, I don't like that, but it is better than the current system. Or for those who are willing to share the data, or those instances where there's not necessarily a problem in sharing that data, why shouldn't you get paid some of what they're ultimately generating off of that? I think both could be interesting, but the best case is definitely just don't collect data.
1000%. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, Web3, the whole ethos behind that, or one of the main pillars, is like owning your own data. So you're right. Like, that is the preferential way of doing it. Like, you own it from the beginning, and then you have the right to distribute that or profit off of it, even if it's just a little bit. Maybe it just pays for your Netflix account every month. At least you're getting some concession that you wouldn't otherwise have. You're just getting milked for all your data. And I wanted to, before going to Score and Raghu, I wanted to ask Alex too, because we actually had a great interview with the lads at Session For those that don't know, it's an amazing privacy. It's an app for communicating that doesn't steal all your data. But I think we asked them, and I can't remember the answer. But how are businesses supposed to make money if they're not allowed to sell their data? Because some businesses are purely built around that. Some it's just an add-on. So I wanted to, how do Session justify to their shareholders or token holders or whatever, like, we don't want to steal people's data and sell it. So sorry, we're missing out on that huge revenue stream, because obviously we're all economically motivated in this world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I think that to some people, and increasingly, I think this will be the case, it's a product advantage to be not collecting that data. I mean, Seth kind of touched on this as well. Like, you can reduce a lot of liability and reduce a lot of spend if you're not processing these enormous troves of information. And so, as a platform, that's kind of Session's policy. Beyond that, I think, we can have collaborative networks like we have with a decentralized network in Session. I think the Anyone protocol is kind of doing a similar thing here, where you can have really scalable networks that can produce, that can offer complex, sophisticated services a lot more effectively than you can if you're just like spinning up an AWS cluster or something like that. So for our purposes, this is working really well, and it's a lot more cost efficient, I suppose, for the time being at least. And then beyond that, we have a tokenized system where people will be able to pay for features, very strictly not privacy features, but for other things that put increased strain on the network, like sending larger files, for example. And then that will offset the cost, for the commons. So I think this is, one model that is enabled by Web3, and I hope to see a lot more technology taking this kind of path instead of selling out the entire user base.
Absolutely, yeah. I would love to personally see more initiatives like that are not solely based on extracting as much value out of it as possible for shareholders, but just something for the greater good. We all deserve privacy. At least I think so. Raghu, sorry to cut you off, man. Go ahead.
No worries. I think, absolutely, the concept of giving that option, I feel, is quite crucial. And even at Score, we play around a lot around data. We interact with a lot of gamers. Storing their data is a key factor there, but having an optional factor that if they want us to utilize that data to improve certain mechanisms, that's applicable. But in the end, the choice has to be theirs, right? Where I think we need to start holding the projects. I wouldn't say legacy platforms would be 100% down for this, but at least newer projects and builders in the space need to be held accountable for these activities where consent, minimized data architecture, where default should always be opt out rather than opting in for data arbitrage, and revocable key access. As I said, every user should always have a kill switch where they, in the end, are in control of their data metrics, and metadata minimized interactions where no one should need to over disclose just to ideally participate or stay involved. I feel this would be a key factor. And this is where it gets interesting. We keep thinking of privacy as a moral obligation, but in reality, it's one of the most underpriced commercial opportunities in the entire space. The next billion users, I believe, they won't come for crypto or come in crypto just because of decentralization. They'll come because they're tired of being farmed for attention, tired of surrendering financial footprints, tired of surrendering essential records that justify who they are, and or even location data metrics, as Melo you were highlighting, just to access products or free experiences, which becomes the convenience factor. And whoever gives them the real privacy, not in just words, not in marketing, but in protocol level guarantees, will be the winner. Not just trust, not just adoption, but the right to define what digital citizenship actually means in this new evolving era. And when you as a user feel safe, you build. When you feel watched, you ideally hesitate in making certain aspects. And when you feel you're owned, you ideally exit from certain interactions in the system. And if we want to build networks of aligned, empowered users, privacy cannot be optional. It's the precondition of creativity. It's ideally the architecture of trust. And it's the baseline for any digital society worth building or being involved on a larger stratosphere. Is that about it?
Yeah, for sure. I love that, and I'm a little bit of a doomer with my take on that, though. I think I would love to see more financial incentivization for these companies to offer privacy as a default setting, but I'm a little bit skeptical about it. But I hope you're right. And Jeremy, you haven't said anything in a while, but I would love to hear from you, and then Seth, and after that.
Yeah, I think for data, it's kind of you're kind of asking them to shoot themselves in the foot, or asking the entire system to shoot themselves in the foot by offering privacy because they get so much from that data. I mean, collectively, they make trillions upon trillions of dollars solely because of that data. It teaches them how to sell to you, what to sell to you, stuff like that. So it's going to be extraordinarily difficult unless we as people first start creating enterprises to compete with these enterprises that steal your data, but then second, stop using the ones that are giving away your data in exchange for the ones that aren't. The ones that aren't don't even exist in most industries. Most things that you want to buy, you can't actually buy. Most things you want to do, you can't actually do without using somebody who's going to steal your data. Or not steal it, I guess, because you know it's happening, but they're going to sell off your data and collect it and everything else. It's almost impossible to get most things in this world without going through somebody who does that. So first we have to create those channels that don't do that. And then we as a people have to say, we're done dealing with the ones that do and collectively move to the ones that don't. That's really the only way that I see it changing. I don't see it changing right now because once again, it's extremely counterproductive. And there's no, if they charge the amount of money that they would lose by not selling data, then everything would become too expensive to afford because they would still want the same profits that they were getting before, and so they'd have to put that charge onto the customer, and your data is more valuable oftentimes than what you're buying or consuming. The company's making more off your data than they are off of whatever products they're selling in a lot of cases. So you're talking about some things that you're buying doubling or tripling or quadrupling in price just so that the company can cut off the data and still make the same amount of money. So yeah, that's a big issue.
Yeah, for sure. And people seem to forget, but if the product is free, or sometimes it even is not free, but if it's free, you are the product. Your data is the product, and it's time people become more aware of that fact. Seth, you had your hand up before, but I don't know if it was like residual or not.
Oh yeah, just residual.
Oh,
I'll let
okay.
others jump in on this one.
No worries.
I don't wanna monopolize the mic time.
All right. Well, we don't have so much time left. I think we have like maybe 10 minutes before we got to cut things. But I have two questions left. The first one is coming from our community. I think our good friend Mike from our community from One Click. Check them out too. They're awesome. He said, doesn't privacy sort of go against the original tenets or ethos of blockchain? Isn't it supposed to be built around transparency in the first place? So how do we sort of remedy that and allow these two things to coexist? Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, go ahead. Alex.
Yeah, I guess. Oh,
No, anybody.
oh,
Nobody jumped on that one.
yeah, I just figured. Well, I guess. Yeah, I guess I'll start and say that we've already been doing it for quite some time. You can have certain transaction data while still keeping privacy of others. I mean, we've had tokens like Monero and Zcash, privacy tokens in the industry for not too much shorter than Bitcoin's been around. It wasn't. It was really the early 2010s. I mean, by 2011, Monero existed because when Silk Road first came out, Monero was around and being used. So, we've had privacy tokens, had privacy-based blockchains for quite a while. So the two can coexist. And we have examples that are almost 2 decades old that we can go off of to frame how they can exist. And now you got zero knowledge proofs and stuff like that as well. So there's plenty of framework to show how you can have privacy and still have transparency at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I don't know who was next, but let's say Seth and then Alex and then Izzy.
Yeah, I mean he hit it right on the head. The main thing to me is a blockchain does have to transmit some data, but it does not have to be transparent in all ways by design. And Monero was obviously the kind of the cutting edge thing back in 2014 when it launched to show that you could publish as little data as possible just to prove that a transaction was legitimate, didn't create funds, but you don't have to reveal the receiver, the sender, or the amount in order to have a valid provable transaction on a blockchain. So it's definitely not something that's incompatible. It is something that's difficult because a blockchain is something that lives forever. And so as we're constantly in this arms race of privacy versus surveillance, the things that you do today might be broken in the future if there's improvements in how the surveillance state works, that sort of thing. So it is tricky when it comes to blockchains, but it's actually absolutely not kind of counter to how they work. And I think the other thing that's really important is a lot of people think that it's like either transparent or private. But the beautiful thing, again, with how cryptography works is that you can have something like Monero that's private by default, but the user still has the ability to opt out of that privacy. But instead of having to opt into privacy, like on Bitcoin and Ethereum and other chains, in Monero, you naturally have a state of privacy and you have to go out of your way to lose that privacy. And there are some legitimate reasons to do so. Let's say you're accepting donations for a nonprofit, you need to reveal those donations. So you can publish a view key, publish the main address, and anyone can see the transactions that come in. Or if you have to provide them to a tax accountant or who knows, there's many scenarios where you would want to reveal this information, but it's up to you. And again, that's ultimately what privacy is its choice. Instead of your data being revealed by default and you having to choose to take back control in things like Monero, your privacy is you're empowered with privacy by default, and then you can take extra steps to reveal some of that data as necessary to the world, which is how everything should be. Like every system we're building should orient towards privacy by default with good user experience, but with the option for users to opt out of that privacy when there's a clear reason and a clear benefit for them to do so.
Well said. And you totally just reminded me. I don't think we're going to have enough time to talk about it, but Monero, there was some huge controversy the other day that I saw. I don't know if it's true or not, but Qubit trying to take over the protocol basically and then threatening to sell the data. I don't know if that's true or not, but I saw an interesting thread on it nonetheless. So I'll try to post it here later so everybody can judge that for themselves. And Alex?
Yeah, look, I think Seth gave pretty much the best possible answer there. But just to add one quick note, which is that, it's important on an individual basis for, a particular wallet or a particular transaction for it to be possible for that to be transparent. Another thing that I think is really important to this kind of blockchain movement is that the system itself is also has this option for transparency so that we can all clearly observe and understand, the rules of the game that we're playing, which is something that I think was a huge criticism and still is a huge criticism of the financial system, which is that really it's completely opaque. It's so difficult for a normal person to become involved, to understand what's happening. And a lot of the time, these are really significant things that might have material impacts on their life. But it's just, there's no window into it. So blockchain can give us that.
Well said. And just in time, I think Izzy has to run in a minute, but feel free, Izzy. That was your chance.
Yeah, literally 1 minute. But I mean, the other two, they like Seth and Alex. Well, you both said things which I was going to say anyway. So this is just kind of an add-on. Yeah, I see. Well, crypto kind of came out of a response to the surveillance state, right? The kind of cypherpunk mailing list was around kind of building things like mixed nets and cryptographic kind of protections for individual privacy. And I kind of see it as a balancing of the power over privacy or the control over privacy, as I think it was Alex who said, that right now, what the default is the big institutions get privacy, but us little individuals don't get privacy, and we have to give up all of our data. And there's no other options except for what's coming out of kind of the crypto space. So I guess I kind of like look at it and look at the space as balancing out that. And again, I'm just going to repeat what I think Seth said. It's about control and choice, and therefore I don't think they run against each other, this idea of transparency and privacy. But yeah, I've got to go. So really nice space. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Azine. Thanks for co-hosting. Much appreciated, and for the idea as well. And I think that's you said it really well. Like maybe it's the solution isn't like a compromise between the two, but just flipping the script and having more privacy for us and more, transparency for these huge corporations, these politicians that are getting these donations that are not being really reported on. Obviously, buying vast amounts of Trump coin or bribing politicians with meme coin is the new paradigm, I guess, that we're seeing this year. Pretty sad. But yeah, I appreciate all these answers. And I wanted to ask one more quick question before we go. I was going to say end it on a happy note, but it's actually kind of a dark question. But basically, I wanted to ask, what's one privacy invasion people aren't worried about yet, but absolutely should be soon? Ending it on a dark note, but definitely an informative one so we can know what to look for next. Feel free, anybody that wants to go, and then we'll close it out.
I think, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hopefully an obvious one for a lot of people here, but as these AI and AI agent applications have increased visibility of your operating system and what you're doing, I think people need to be very, very wary. Especially, we can see people who are really not qualified to be building these kind of apps are doing it, and these apps are getting very popular. Hopefully, we'll see the introduction of standards for these AI-enabled apps to mask and anonymize data by default. That's part of what we're doing. But there's a real risk of things spiraling out of control. It's a new dimension of vulnerability there for consumers.
Yeah, 100%. And we're just going to start using those more and more. We're just scratching the surface. I think AI agents are going to be a huge way of doing everything, even for people that don't even use AI yet. AI agents are going to be a huge part of the day-to-day work balance and personal life balance, I think. Anybody else? Yep, Alex.
Yeah, just to add to that idea of AI integrated apps, also any new app that you see kind of pop out of nowhere that is self-prescribed as vibe coded, I would say be very careful of that, because the person that made it probably doesn't even know exactly what's going on. And I think we're going to see, kind of a Cambrian explosion of new tools that are coming out that are predominantly built with at least the support of AI coders. So yeah, watch out, I guess, for that.
Oh yeah, I think we definitely need to do a space soon on vibe coding and AI coding. It's definitely a fascinating area to look into and a scary one. Okay, Jeremy, GPT 360. Anyone? No, you already went.
Yeah. I would say cameras and microphones in your house all over the place. They're putting cameras in refrigerators now, and microphones they're putting on TVs. You can't buy gaming systems in certain generations without it including a camera system. All of that kind of stuff is connected to the internet. And a lot of it has always on microphone technology too, where the microphone is constantly listening to you. So it's not very hard to go from constantly listening to constantly recording as well. So yeah, I think when you think about the sheer level of cameras and microphones that are connected to the internet that are in your house, for most people, it's astounding, and they don't really think about it very often.
Oh man, now I'm planning to be an Amish person. I think total Luddite. Get rid of all my tech. Go ahead, GPT 360.
That's right about cameras and microphones, and especially I think in general more companies to have a part of the marketing they will have on the devices like hardware switching of microphone and camera, like totally hardware switch. So this will be a part of marketing for some companies for sure. When privacy will be so big issues in coming years, after all the information we shared today about AI, how they're collecting, how they're using it, and etc., I think some companies will play double game. From one side, they will collect data, and from other side, you can actually hide your some stuff. So yes, hardware totally things that can be hardware turned off will actually did the best for us, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else that hasn't gone yet before we wrap up? I think just Seth, maybe.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. I think just it can be kind of doom and gloom when you think about how many problems there are out there. I will just kind of just add to maybe counterbalance a little bit, even if it's not a direct answer to the question. Just that there's fantastic alternatives and options for people. Like we talked about the issues with the G Suite at the beginning. Proton has built out competitive offerings to most of the G Suite. Now it's not a perfect replacement. I'm not going to tell you that you won't have issues or that there won't be some edge cases that you don't love compared to using Google services, but they offer pretty much everything that Google does in terms of functionality, and they're constantly improving. When we talk about like mobile privacy on iOS, you can actually get fantastic privacy by just enabling advanced data protection and private relay, which are two features that most users have access to. I think the UK still doesn't allow you to do advanced data protection because they're losing their minds over there. But most of the world you can, and that gives you end-to-end encryption on the vast majority of Apple services. Uh, if you are on Android, you can install Graphene OS, which is a privacy-focused version of Android that lets you take back control of your data. Again, there's going to be some downsides to usability, but not drastic, not as bad as I think most people think that they will be. But that's just a few examples. There's many options to these things, and I think this choice of having to sacrifice convenience for privacy is drastically lessening as we go, as people are building really fantastic privacy tools, and as user experience is coming to privacy and starting to catch up. There's some really great options out there. So as you realize there's things in your lives that life that you want to replace or change, know that there are good options out there. Do a little digging, and I'm sure you'll find some good stuff.
Fantastic answer. And I'm definitely going to either pester you later on for that info again or ask you to drop it in the thread so that we can access it because it's fantastic. Like, I definitely want to check out Proton. So thank you for that suggestion. And I think without further ado, we are going to wrap it up. I just want to remind everybody, thank you for tuning in, and please follow these amazing individuals that have joined us today and companies. Everybody here, I think, is working on some really cool stuff, so they deserve to have a light cast on them. So please feel free to follow them, follow Arcanum Ventures, follow myself. If you enjoy these kind of spaces, we'll be back again next week on Thursday with another topic. And I would also love to hear from both the panelists and the fine people listening what you would love to hear us talk about next, because we're always in search of new topics. We want to be where the bleeding edge is, where whatever the newest narrative is, whatever people are talking about, we want to have an informative decision, or a panel about that. So please drop your topics, check out the thread for information, and like I said, follow everybody here. So thanks for tuning into another Boom Room. This has been episode 23 on privacy and whether it's a human right or not. I don't even think we got to that question, but thanks for tuning in nonetheless. See you next week, everybody.